Hello, I'm Jessica Rivera with your latest Newsbreak. In New York, Democrat Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez says Vice President Harris telling immigrants not to cross the border illegally into the U.S. is disappointing. AOC added that the U.S. can't set someone's house on fire and then blame them from fleeing. In Los Angeles, a woman was arrested after pulling a knife close to a city councilman. The councilman is a mayoral candidate and was speaking in Venice about the city's homelessness problem and pushing for a crackdown. And in Wisconsin, a father of three has reached his goal of completing 1,500,231 push-ups, setting a new world record. The record is for the most push-ups in 1 year and was all done to raise money for the families of fallen first responders. And that's your latest Newsbreak. Now back to America's Voice Live.
That guy's been working out. Thank you for the update, Jessica. Greatly appreciate that. Monday, during the press conference with the Guatemalan president, Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris, was asked why she hasn't visited the border yet. I want you to hear her response. Here it is.
The reason I am here in Guatemala as my first trip as Vice President of the United States is because this is one of our highest priorities, and I came here to be here on the ground to speak with the leader of this nation around what we can do in a way that is significant, is tangible, and has real results. And I will continue to be focused on that kind of work as opposed to grand gestures.
Grand gestures. It's not what she thought back in 2018 when she visited an immigration detention center in San Diego and denounced President Donald Trump for his zero-tolerance immigration policy. And she says she needs to be on the ground to understand what's going on. I think that would also be true at the border. But listen, here's what she said previously.
This is simply inhumane, and it is unacceptable. And even with the executive order from the President of the United States, that number will be the same tomorrow. Those 2,000 plus children will be in the same situation tomorrow that they were in today and the day before and the day before that.
The number today, by the way, has been above 20,000 minors in custody of the United States Border Patrol and other agencies. Many more have been dispersed around the country. Here to talk more about it, the former executive assistant to President Ronald Reagan, author of the book, The President Will See You Now, My Stories and Lesson from Ronald Reagan's Final Years, Peggy Grande. Former Attorney General of Kansas and director of the Amistad Project, Phil Klein, and founder of the Patriot Academy, Rick Green, all here with us. You know, you hear the doublespeak here, guys. For one thing, she said, got to be on the ground. No grand gestures. Is it really a grand gesture, Phil, just to go see the border, just to see what people are looking at every day? And this is not just limited to networks like our own now. CBS, ABC, NBC, they're all going. They're all seeing it for themselves. They're leading the newscast with it. This is not a secret. There is a disaster at the border right now, Phil. And is she doing anything about it?
Well, this is an administration that has been more about perception and the grand gesture than principle during the first 6 months of that administration. And no, it is not beyond the vice president to visit the border. In fact, she needs to do so, but the administration would rather you not focus on the border to see what is happening there. It shouldn't have taken 6 months for the Biden administration to be very clear. Don't come unless you come legally. The role of the administration is to enforce the laws and make sure that they are respected. They are there for a purpose, and that is to have orderly immigration. And we need to do that rather than turn it over to the coyotes and those who would exploit children on their way to the United States.
Rick, I'm going to go to you on this one because, you know, it's interesting. She says, don't come during her speech yesterday. If you think about coming to the United States, don't come. Man, when Donald Trump said that, he was a bigot, a racist, a white supremacist, a white nationalist, and a host of other things I can't even say on this program because it's a family show. Kamala Harris says it, and they don't say boo. Seems like a bit of a double standard. Your thoughts?
I thought your choice of clips there was brilliant because, look, back when she was a senator, typical of shallow politicians, they're great at lobbing bombs at whoever's in office and accusing and criticizing, but they have no solution. So now that she's in office, we got a word salad there. I mean, she just can't even explain why she's unwilling to go to the border. Donald Trump had answers. He had solutions. He was solving the problem. And here they are creating problems with no solutions whatsoever. Even the president of Guatemala criticizing the Biden administration for their messaging and how they've made the whole situation worse. So that's typical of politicians that care more about being in office than actually doing something. And it's unfortunate not only for the American people, but those kids and others at the border.
And Rick, you're right. We have brilliant producers here that pick the right sound bites that were exactly right. And I want to say that. Peggy, I have to ask you, because it was your former boss, Ronald Reagan, who gave amnesty to a few million people. And some people still go back to that and say, you know, that was a bad decision that has led to more bad decisions over the last many decades. Are we in a spot because Ronald Reagan allowed amnesty that we've continued to kind of flounder in that same area, or is this completely different?
Well, I see this as completely different because Ronald Reagan was somebody who owned up to his words and used strong language. And I think for him himself, he would have said that that was something that he expected the other part of that would be done as it was promised to him. But nobody's listening to the language of Kamala Harris when she says do not come, because we know that there's an open, porous border. And look at the language that Kamala Harris uses, by sharp contrast of somebody strong and full of resolve like my former boss, Ronald Reagan. She says things like, I believe if you come to the border, we will turn you away, or we discourage illegal immigration. Why not say you will be turned away and we prohibit illegal immigration? And so she's very soft with the language she uses because we know that she actually doesn't see this as a crisis. She's told us that she's going to address the root causes of this problem, but you can't address the root causes without addressing the immediate concern. If somebody's breaking into your house, you don't say, well, let me address the root causes of that. No, you stop them and then you address the root causes. And so she's got this completely backwards. Even the Northern Triangle country presidents are now criticizing the Biden administration for this. The American people should be rightfully concerned and outraged. Our country is being changed without our consent, and we should demand that it's stopped.
You know, I think the most ridiculous thing, I'm just going to add this on my own, that this is somehow caused by climate change. These people rushing to the southern borders from climate change might be the strangest, dumbest thing I've ever heard. Well, at least this week. Here's something else. I read comments like Brian Stelter is a bootlicker on social media after his less than softball interview with Jen Psaki. I want you to hear part of this when he says, what does the press get wrong? Listen.
Jen, thanks for coming on Reliable Sources.
My pleasure.
Busy summer ahead, infrastructure, election reform. What does the press get wrong when covering Biden's agenda? When you watch the news, when you read the news, what do you think we get wrong?
Well, look, I think some of our muscles have atrophied a little bit over the last few years, and there isn't a lot of memory, or recent memory, or longer memory on how long it takes to get legislation forward, or how messy the process of negotiating and the process of getting legislation across the finish line can be.
You know, sometimes I just watch that and say, how does he have a job? That's just me. And I realize that you three could form the Brian Stelter fan club if you weren't here doing the AVL panel, and I appreciate that. Let me start with you, Phil. I'm sure you probably watch this program every weekend religiously because of Brian's pithy comments and his insightful commentary. But, I mean, come on. What do you make of it?
Well, actually, I've got to say, Steve, I like the question. I just wish he was sincere and asked others and listened to them. Like the press getting it wrong, believing the American people can't handle the truth, so they have to push a narrative and they have to censor any reasonable discussion as to the origin of the Wuhan virus. And the press also can't let any discussion take place regarding what's happened with our elections, which was the most lawless election in United States history, with local officials unilaterally defying state law. I mean, I can go on and on in what the press gets wrong. The problem was,
Phil, I think it's so upsetting. It's so upsetting it's turned you on your head, which is unusual that these things happen. Let's go to Rick. That's fine. Rick, what do you make of this interview?
Well, that Phil can get it right even standing upside down. I mean, that's impressive. So, listen, journalism on the left is absolutely dead. These sycophants, I mean, Bootlicker is right. They're sycophants, and they cover up the truth. This is the same network that has Jake Tapper, who, criticizes all of us, like Phil and others, for questioning the breaking of the Constitution and the law last year by these secretaries of state and others. And yet 4 years ago, it was fine for him to write a whole book on questioning the outcome of the election. They're hypocrites. They don't want the truth. They're covering for the people that are pushing the policies they want. That is not journalism. And that's why people are flocking to your network. That's why people are flocking to your show. So that's the good news, is that people are hungry for truth, and there are other outlets that are providing that truth.
Yeah. Jake who? Anyhow, Peggy, bring us home, Peggy. What do you make of all this? I mean, it really is embarrassing. Sometimes these folks get interviews. They should be pretty decent interviews, and they do nothing with it at all. What's your favorite ice cream? I mean, come on. Is this the best we can do in the press today? We've got to do better.
Well, it's the best they can do, because that's all they're trying to do. And they should be ashamed of themselves and should be embarrassed about their entire industry, the mainstream media, which no longer has any journalistic integrity or seeks truth. They have defrauded the American people for so long, covering up for everything that was related to Donald Trump because they were blinded by their hatred for him. And we should be concerned about that. But where it becomes even more dangerous is recently from the White House podium, Jen Psaki said that right-wing outlets should be treated as if they are forms of Chinese or Russian propaganda outlets and should be treated with extreme caution. That's where it gets dangerous. It's one thing for the mainstream media to have a bias, which they don't even try to hide anymore. It's another thing for this to be coming from the White House podium itself, and the American people should be rightfully very concerned about that.
Peggy, Phil, Rick, I greatly appreciate you always as you come and join us here for a great conversation. Again, another good conversation today. Thank you all for being here. We do it every day here on America's Voice Live. We have a roundtable discussion of the big stories of the day, and even sometimes we talk about Brian Stelter. So we cover it all. Still to come today, crime in America is on the rise.